Hello everybody, and you're welcome to Python Made Simple. In our previous video, we looked at the while loop in Python, but today we would go forward and touch on the for loop in Python. Now, the for loop is just like a while loop, but it's used to iterate over a given sequence. So it works with items which are in a sequence. So you arrange them in a sequence, or something like a string, which is one letter after the other. So it's used to iterate over such things. So now, giving you an example of what I mean, let's say that I have a list. So a list has an items in the form of a sequence, and in that list I'm calling it items. Then in it I have bags, I have a stool, I have a pencil, I think I have a pen. So this is my list and it's in a sequence. So now I want to iterate over these items in this sequence. So what I want Python to do is I want Python to go into this list and give me one item after the other. So what I'll tell Python to do is for, using the for loop. For I, this I here I'm using represents each item in the loop. So for I and items, don't forget your semicolon with a proper indentation. It should print. So for every item in the items list, it should print I and add an exclamation to the end. So let's save this and run. So you realize that yes, it goes into the list and brings out every item in it. Good. So let's try this other example. We can also do away with, first of all, assigning variables or storing the items to names and variables. So I can also use the for loop without actually defining any variable. I just use for I in the list. I'm using the print statement. You realize that yes, it goes in there and gives me every item in the list. I can also work with range. So I can tell Python to, using the first for loop, for I in range, it should give me items, 5. So print I, save and run this. Okay. So what this does is it gives me all the numbers from 0 to 4 without 5 inclusive. It's a range. Now I can also, using the for loop, let Python pick items within a range using a certain increment. So I can say for I in range, it should pick numbers between 2 and 12 with an increment of 1. So let's save this and run. So you realize that 2, 3, up to 11. It doesn't add 12. Now we can do that the other way around. We can do a reverse call on items in a list. So why don't I bring my 12 here and make this 2? But because the beginning of the range is a number greater than the end of the range, you would want to tell Python to go in a descending order, an inverse order, if I'm to put it. So using this, let's save this and run. So we have Python listing from 12, picking all the items from 12 down to 3 minus 2. Now we can iterate over strings. Yes. So when I say we can iterate over strings, we can take a word and we tell Python to go into that word and bring out every letter in that word. So let me create a variable called string. And in this variable, I have a word called loop in it, loops in it. So we can say that for I in string, it should print I. So saving this and running, it gives us every item in the string. Now, for loop and while loop are quite similar. Just that for the for loop, it is used when the number of iterations are fixed. So if we look at all the iterations we've done already, they are in a way fixed. We know that loop has this number of items in it. We know that from 2 to 12 has this number of numbers within it, and so on. But for the while loop, it is used to execute a block of code multiple times. It really doesn't have a fixed number of iteration. Okay, so I think these are just the basic differences between the while loop and the for loop. Thank you very much for staying tuned. I hope to see you next week. Bye bye.